This podcast is brought to you by Community Bridges Incorporated. CBI is a premier, nonprofit, fully integrated healthcare provider of substance use and behavioral health programs right here in Arizona. They offer prevention, education, and treatment services using cutting-edge technology, nationally recognized, evidence-based models. CBI believes in maintaining the dignity of human life, and they know recovery is possible. The staff of over 1,600 employees celebrate, believe, and inspire others daily, as over 75% of the team members are in recovery themselves. Contact CBI at scheduling@cbridges.com or visit their website, communitybridgesaz.org. Hey everyone, it's Brandon Lee, host of the podcast Escaping Rock Bottom. I'm really excited to introduce this story to you and this gentleman here in the Valley. His name is Bill. He's a veteran, and his recovery is so inspirational. I know it'll inspire you. And he's also going to tell us how he was able to change his life, how he was able to get sober, turn his life around, and truly create a life, which I think he'll describe as a life he never thought was imaginable. And he's living an incredible life right now. So I'm excited to introduce Bill to the podcast. Bill, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, first off, congratulations on your recovery.
Thank you.
I know how hard it is. I know what it's like to be depressed and living that life of darkness. And sometimes when you're in that darkness, I wondered if I would ever see the light. Would there ever be light at the end of the tunnel? Would I ever be able to finally break free from the chains of addiction? How much time do you have clean and sober now?
I've been clean off of a lot of substances. Well, basically 3/13 of 05. I've been clean, sober, enjoying every minute of it.
That's awesome. Okay, so tell me a bit. Let's go back to your childhood. Where were you born and raised?
I'm a native Phoenician. I was born and raised here in Phoenix, Arizona. I graduated Shadow Mountain, home of the Matadors. Go Matadors! And like I said, I'm the oldest of six. I have triplet sisters and two younger sisters from them, and I love them dearly. I'm a family guy. That's something else too that I lost touch with during my drug use. A lot of separation from that, you know.
I think all of us who've lived a life of booze and drugs, a lot of those relationships that we form, whether it be with our relatives or our family or even our friends, there's a lot of repair work that needs to be done, because us, when we're living a life of, an addict or an alcoholic, we're pretty destructive in our behavior. So take me back again to your childhood. I love the fact that you're a native. I don't know why. I'm in this groove right now where I keep meeting all these natives from Arizona. I'm like, where did you all come from? Like, it's rare sometimes to meet a native. Go back to your childhood, and when did you start kind of dipping into maybe some mischievous behavior?
Interesting. Okay, so I think if I remember back right, probably high school. I was in the ROTC programs. I was doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I had a pretty rough family life. But it was a loving family life. I don't know. It's as best as you can describe dysfunctional families.
When you say rough, do you mean like physically abusive, emotionally abusive?
Yeah, that's touching it. We had, unfortunately, I had to deal with some physical abuse, some verbal abuse. A lot of that kind of shaped us to where we are today, including my siblings. But this is, talking about what I've experienced. Kind of put into a position of testing the waters above everything else, where I wanted to go in my life. I thought I wanted to be a military guy. So I did the ROTC thing. And in high school, nothing with, no bullying or any of that stuff in high school, but a lot of it was verbal abuse. I had an alcoholic father that was verbally abusive to us. And back then, a lot of things, they would take the reins. My dad would call us out on a lot of stuff and degrade us, and and it that was a little insulting, and it realizing now what I know crushed me. Crushed my sister, my family life, but crushed me dearly. So I was in such a hurry to go to the military, went in and graduated, and off I went. So,
you know what I'll say to that too, because that's something I can definitely relate to. I definitely grew up. It was this mix. Like sometimes there would be a lot of love and a lot of praise and affection, if I did something well. But at the same time, I lived this life of walking on eggshells because I just didn't know what mom was going to walk in the door that day. And, sometimes it was physical, but a lot of just verbal abuse, a lot of degrading, what I like to call poison pen letters, or poison pen text. But what a lot of people don't realize is that in our formative years as children, if we do suffer any type of verbal or even physical abuse, it throws off our wiring in our brain. It really does a lot of damage, but we go into survival mode, right? As a child, we go into survival mode because we really can't fight back
right.
against our parents. So we just kind of suffer the abuse, we compartmentalize it, and we try to forget it because it's just a bad memory. But what a lot of people don't realize, eventually it comes to the surface if it goes untreated. And for me, I began acting out at age 15 with a lot of drugs and a lot of sex, because I think a lot of that early childhood sex abuse, but also just the physical and mental abuse as well, it was untreated and I started to behave badly.
Right. Yeah, I was, I guess I can go back to high school too. You start the experimental sex things too. When you get all that, you don't know where to go. So same thing, I can relate to a lot of that. But a lot of the stuff was mental, verbal abuse is mental demolish.
And it kills your self-esteem.
It sure does, yeah.
And usually when that happens, sometimes we like to numb ourselves to make us feel like we're accepted, that we fit in.
Yeah.
So you finish the ROTC. What happens next?
So I had already was starting to look into the Army. I had everything lined up to get away from, and don't get me wrong, my family, very, we were fortunate enough to have clothes for all of us. We were fed. My mom made it a very supportive environment with what she could. It's just that abuse had already damaged me and taken the toll, So I'd already started looking at the military, and I said to myself, as soon as I'm 18, man, I'm gone. I'm out of here. Screw this. I'm out. I hit 18, and that was the hardest decision that I've ever made on my own as an adult, quote. And I signed up for military, real stuff. So in 94, I graduated from Shadow and joined the Army. And they take an Arizona boy and threw me to Georgia. And I'm experiencing a whole different culture shock down in Georgia. And then after I graduate from basic training and AIT down there, they take Arizona and put me in upstate New York. So
I just got to stop you there.
Sure.
So I lived in New York City. So I've lived in New York. Before I came to Arizona, I lived in Atlanta, Georgia for 4 years and then came here. So you're going back to all my old stomping grounds.
Good deal. Well, then you can relate because New York is where you find out about lake effect snow.
Yes.
Never heard of it before until I went there, and there's 20, 30 snow drifts, 30-foot snow drifts. Just unbelievable. My time in the military, I loved it. Excuse me. We went on many deployments, met a lot of folks there that I still talk to this day. And it's just that brother in arms at the time, brother and sister in arms. But I was on an all-male rapid deployment unit. So started doing my thing there in the military. And I think that's when I started that don't ask, don't tell portion of your life. You can't really tell in the military, but that's when I started, I guess, experimenting with sexual and basically drinking a lot.
Let me ask you a little bit about that, living through a policy of don't ask, don't tell, because what a lot of people don't realize is that policy of don't ask, don't tell was essentially telling anybody who's gay, you're absolutely wrong in what you're doing. You can't live your life authentically. And when someone tells you you cannot be your authentic self, well, guess what you're going to do? You're going to become something to where you can be something. You can be accepted.
Right.
It was such a detrimental policy toward gay people who were in the military, telling them, we want you to fight for our country. We want you to sacrifice your life, but we don't want you to be your authentic self.
True.
How damaging is that?
That was devastating. I mean, there was a group of us that got together that we're in that category, and we're hush. You had to be hushed because if you wanted to stay, like you said, in the military, you don't say nothing about it or you're out. So I was devastated enough with that abuse at home that I would do whatever I needed to do to stay in the military. And then once I felt that I was confident enough with myself, then we'll see where it goes from there. But at the age of 18, you needed that camaraderie, and you start talking with folks, and then, oh yeah, hey, I'm gay too. Shh, don't tell anybody.
And you know what that creates too, especially for addicts.
Right.
I've always described myself as a chameleon. You know, that's how good we're taught, especially gay addicts as children. We're really, really good at kind of blending in to our surroundings so as not to become a target.
And that's exactly what happened. And those folks, I still talk to them today. 20 years later, we're still friends, you know? Yeah. Thank goodness for social media.
Well, there's a bond there too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we're bonded. I always say there's always a strong bond when I meet somebody who's walked in my shoes, walked through the traumatic part, not the easy parts of life, but we bond when we see somebody else who's gone through a really traumatic event and they've survived, and we can relate on that level.
Right.
Okay, so where does life begin to kind of go off the rails for you?
I was discharged from the Army, honorably served. I came back, I did some reserve time, and I got this wild thought of, you know what? I'm qualified for the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. So I'm going to go do it. And I made up my mind, and I tested, I qualified. I was supposed to deploy down to Tucson for ALETA, which is Arizona Law Enforcement Training Academy. One thing led to another. We started partying a little bit a couple days before my deployment time. And then I missed my deployment. And during that time, I had experimented with cocaine. I had some meth that weekend, and I was drunk as a skunk. So that's kind of where it started, a little bit of a tilt for me. But coming out of the military, I was like, I'm invincible. I'm good to go. I'm still a youngster. I can go do another job somewhere else. So I got into truck driving. Started doing truck driving for a while. And then I went into a full tilt. I had a really tragic event happen in my family's life. And that consisted of a murder-suicide. So I had my father and one of my sisters. He had committed murder and then suicide on himself. He completed suicide. And that rocked us. That was the full tilt, complete. I mean, we had depression. Everybody felt it. And we kind of went from there. I dove off the deep end. I did everything you could possibly think of. I've done every drug except, I don't know, what's the GHB?
GHB.
Yeah.
And that was my drug of choice for 10 years. GHB. Yeah. I used to order that stuff by the gallon from Europe.
Yeah.
When it was legal, I used to literally, and by the way, you only needed like a cap full in order to really mess you up. And here I was buying that stuff by the gallon, keeping it in the back of my truck just so I would never run out. I would always have a safe supply,
on the go.
Literally gallons of GHB.
Oh, geez.
I got you covered. So you did all the other drugs and I got that last one for you.
So we're good. We got a balance. We're good. And that was really it. I started that full tilt. I started getting mixed in with the wrong folks. And then for a long time, I was bouncing in and out of jail. And then I got into this hook of meth and motorcycles.
What could go wrong?
Nothing. Yeah, absolutely nothing. So you get tired. And the way I thought, I get tired of walking, and I needed a quick fix. I needed some dope. There's a motorcycle in that apartment complex over there. I'm going to go take it. So I go take it. I take it to the dope guy. I turn it in. I get a, teener, 8-ball, whatever. And that's my come up. You take off, you go start partying, you invite everybody, and next thing you know, everything's gone. I need to go get it again because I missed that push, Started racking up felonies. Ended up going to prison after a while, the first time. Got released from prison, and actually, let me back up a little bit. With that first prison stint, they sent me to a drug rehab yard, believe it or not, because they were able to recognize during my intake process that this guy's really heavy into everything, you know. I was withdrawing from a lot of stuff, a lot of substance when I was incarcerated in local. And then when I did my intake for prison, like I said, my last 6 to 8 months, they sent me to a drug yard down by Tucson in Marana. Got back out of prison that term, went right back to the same thing that I was used to, you know.
And this, and you know, I'll just interject right there. It really goes to the whole philosophy as well that, you know, the debate is, should we be sending people with a drug history when really their crimes are based on drugs? If we really want to fix them and fix society so that they become productive members of society, well, just sending somebody to prison does not get them sober off of drugs.
No.
As a matter of fact, people go to prison if they're drug addicts and they just get high in prison.
That's true.
Right.
That's yeah. And on the drug rehab yards, you know,
that's just that cycle, right? I mean, it goes back to just that cycle of arrested for drugs, arrested for drug paraphernalia, send you to prison, you do your time, you get out. But if you don't heal those wounds, if you don't heal that trauma, if you don't go back and rewire the brain of an addict, well, guess what's going to happen? They're going to get out of prison and they're going to go back and reuse, and they're going to become another menace to society, breaking into cars, stealing motorcycles just to get their fix. And it becomes really just this vicious cycle. Right. So eventually you go through drug rehab or you go through detox. Mm-hmm. When do you get out of prison? And let's get to the part of the story where eventually you turn to CBI, Community Bridges, here in the Valley, right, which is a pretty incredible treatment program that really focuses on those people who are forgotten, you know, those people in our underserved communities, you know, those people who sometimes feel like they don't have any help.
Right. So I was released the second time from prison. By the way, that's when I found my sobriety date is 3/13 of 05. Released, oddly enough, on 4/20 of 2010.
That's your higher power just having a little inside joke.
Yeah, a little jab there. There you go. But coming back out and trying to reintegrate to society, I turned to the VA and I was looking for substance abuse treatment because one of the smartest things that I did when I got out is I disassociated with everybody, family, friends, everybody. I cut them off so I can focus on me. And I forgot to mention one of the most important factors in my life. In 2003, between my prison terms, I had a son. So he was another part of very important that I needed to stay here for, you know. So that was my main drive. Getting out this time, I knew and I had committed to myself that I was going to get fixed. Like I said, going back out, reintegrating to society, turning to the VA, and then finding community bridges, reestablishing myself. So using the VA for a grant per diem stay was allowing me to re-stabilize, and then attending groups. And I went through the crisis detox facilities. At that point, I really didn't need a detox, but I still needed some type of counseling. I needed some type of outpatient therapy. I needed somebody else to talk to that did the same things I did, you know? And we have a lot of stereotypes, and we'll get into those in a minute, but that come with our lives. You know, the gay world, there's a lot of stereotypes that go into that. But back to me about the substance abuse, it was a huge part of my life to go through treatment, outpatient support services, and just making that contact with somebody from Community Bridges. And not everybody knows that I went through a CBI facility at one point, but I'm sure they will now.
Yeah.
Right. And this was many years ago, back in, 2010, 11-ish. And then going the rest of the time through the VA, you know, going to counseling and treatment, going to supportive services, going to group therapy. Group therapy is something they never had when I got out of the military, and something that I never thought I needed when I got out of the Army. So I had it, right? I was a youngster. So getting to where I'm giving back now, right? My experience with the Community Bridges, you know, I was on parole, and I was referred to my parole officer. I'll never forget it. She goes, go down and reapply at Community Bridges. So you've been clean enough, long enough, go down and apply. So I went there and I'm like, what am I going to apply for? A peer support specialist. I'm like, what the hell is that? Still learning. And I actually went down, I interviewed, I did really well. I was nervous. After during my little stint, I come out, I didn't know if I dressed appropriately. I'm sweating to death. I got the position as a crisis peer. Going in, and that really kind of started it for me in this field, is being on the crisis unit with folks with the exact same story that I just got done dealing with.
And you know what a beautiful aspect of that is? And I think it's only really unique in the recovery industry, is that, listen, the reality is a majority of drug addicts have a criminal background. It just kind of comes with the lay of the land. It's rare. I'm one of the rarities. Should I have a record? You're damn right I should have a record. I was just lucky in that I never got caught, right? I mean, I drove drunk, I drove high, I did everything that a lot of other drug addicts did. Some get caught, some don't, right? So there's a beautiful thing that happens in the recovery industry, is that we are a very forgivable lot, and we like to see past that, because we have walked, a lot of the people who work in the recovery industry are former addicts, right? Because this is the one industry where a recovery center doesn't necessarily look at your past. They look at what you're doing with your life today.
Right.
And we look at the present. We don't judge people by the ugliness or the darkness of their past. We judge people by, show us who you are today. Show us that you're a productive member of society, and we will always be here to give you that chance. Is that something that you felt over at Community Bridges?
Absolutely. I feel fully supported all the way up to all the way up the chain, all the way from the unit peers to the CEO, and you make acquaintances and friendships after a certain amount of time that you've been there, because like you said, we all have that main thing in common, and a majority of the folks in this type of field are in recovery. We all have the same story. It all happened to us. I got you.
But it's a beautiful thing too, because if somebody needs help, and here's another reason why I really cherish the work that CBI does, Community Bridges does, because they have this philosophy that they're not going to turn you away. And there are a lot of treatment centers and recovery centers out there who, listen, they're like, hey, the way our program's set up, if you can't afford to pay, we can't afford to have you on campus. And I get a lot of emails and I get a lot of messages from folks on social media every time a podcast airs. And it's usually of this lot, like, listen, my son or daughter, is an addict, or I'm struggling, but I don't have insurance, or I don't have a ton of money to go get help. And Community Bridges they will figure it out for you, because their mission is to help you and to heal you. And a beautiful thing, like somebody like you, that they hire somebody like you for their peer support. There's no one who will get to another addict or get a message to another addict other than another addict.
That's true.
Because we can sit there and we can tell you, somebody who is broken, someone who is sad, someone who is hopeless, we can look at you and say this, I get it.
Yep.
I know the darkness. I know the pain. I know how miserable life is, because I was there. And this is what I did to turn my life around.
Absolutely. And that's always been our main goal over there. And we turn nobody away. Being across almost this entire beautiful state, we don't turn anybody away. We're open 24/7, 365 a year. And main facilities here, if you show up at one of our West facilities and you need a detox, we're not going to turn you away so you can take yourself over there. We're going to give you a ride. We got you. You show up and I always refer back to tell everybody when I'm out street outreaching, I'm like, man, I don't care if you're a millionaire. If you need detox and you don't know where to go, come over here. Let me take you down to one of our units, and I got you. I don't care if you're here on the street and you have no insurance, you have no connection to benefits or anything at all, we got you. We're going to put you in there and fix it up for you.
And I got to drive that point home again. As somebody who's been in the recovery world for, more than a decade, I cannot tell you enough. A majority of treatment centers don't act that way. They don't operate that way. And what I want my listeners and viewers to know, for everyone who messages me, I get a lot, and it's usually, I've always said this, there is always a place to go. There is always an opportunity out there. There are always resources. So that excuse of I don't have money or I don't have insurance, nobody will accept me, that is not true. Community Bridges will, or they will get you to a place to get you a bed or to get you into detox to help you out.
Right. And Phoenix is big enough anyways with you can't go a few miles without finding a meeting somewhere.
Well, you know what I always like to say too, wherever there's great meetings, there's a lot of drug use. So where there's a lot of drug use, there's a lot of sobriety. So
true, yes.
There's a lot of resources. I'll put it this way. There's a lot of resources here in Arizona, but also meetings as well.
Yes. And they're everywhere.
So what is your life like today?
So, I had a lot of opportunity with Community Bridges, right? Growing, learning, expanding, growing through to leadership roles gives me the opportunity to get back on track where I thought I was going for the sheriff's office, right? My goals are to be successful in business, successful family man, father, and figure. I want to be, and I have been, a figure for a lot of people, I think. I don't want to sound, but my life today is amazing. I am clean. I'm sober. I have a 17-year-old son that I love him to death. I talk to my family members every day. Every single day we check in with each other. I have a sister that lives out of state, and I check in with her. My mom lives right down the road. I check in with her. So, and at work, it's great. I have great communication with everybody. I talk to a lot of folks at work. The clientele that I work with now is, and we can go into that too if you'd like here in a second too, but cut it short, my life is wonderful. So
what's it like being able to, as we like to call in 12-step rooms or AA meetings, we like to call the 12-step, right? Where we go back and we give what we've received. What is it like to work daily? And I know you're not actually, you've been promoted
right.
to leadership roles, but what is it like to be able to look at somebody who is so broken, to look at somebody who just truly has no hope? They only see darkness and they come to you for help. What is that moment like? Because I know what it's like when I've ever had a sponsee hit 6 months that they've never hit 6 months before. They hit a year, and I'm there to give them their 1-year chip, and their families, in the audience, their families in the meeting that day, and you're able to see some of the relationships that they're able to repair because they focused on healing them. What are some of those moments like for you?
A lot of the leadership, a lot of the leadership in these roles with CBI, we do a lot of our administrative stuff, but we get to the field too. I do ride-alongs with the veterans team now. When clients come in to talk with us, we try to, like for instance, my office is the first office you're going to pass to get to the rest of the unit. I'm going to see you. If I recognize some traits, I'm going to come and see you. Been put in this position for a reason because I'm dedicated and I love helping people get to where they need to really be with life, right? And that's successful, clean, and you don't want to be wrapped up in that. So I love being able to go out and talk to people. I'll sit down with you on the curb, even if it's 125 out, I'll bring a bottle of water and we're going to sit and we're going to talk. And being in recovery, I can identify some of the things you're going through, and I'm going to ask you straight out. But that's the unique part of CBI. We get to the field, we get dirty, we go down to the river bottoms, and it doesn't matter if you're an administrative personnel or not, you get down, and even my current position, we go ride-alongs, we do everything. We're down at cash shelters, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing to reduce the amount of homelessness here.
Yeah, and even talking about veterans, and a lot of veterans when they come back from either war or just even a deployment, a lot of them do suffer from post-traumatic stress.
Right.
And a lot of them don't necessarily have even the wherewithal. And I think this is sometimes too, I hate when I hear people say, oh, they're choosing to be homeless. They want to be out there on the street. I'm like, no, that's all they're capable of even thinking because of the trauma that they've suffered and they've never been rewired. To sit there and just look at somebody and say, oh, they're choosing to be out there. I'm like, sometimes they don't even have the mental capability yet because they haven't healed from that trauma to even know to ask for help, to know that there's a life out there waiting for them. And so talk to me a little bit about some of the trauma, that veterans face when they come back, and what are some of the services that are available to them?
So obviously there's different levels of trauma with someone. If they've been to combat, they've been to real world deployments versus non-real world deployments. There's different levels of PTSD. People are skittish when they have real world deployments, and that's okay. A lot of people need to be reintegrated to the VA systems. Unfortunately, the VA had a bad rap, and that's being repaired. As I stated before, when I got out of the military, there wasn't half the services available as there are now. If you have an anger management issue, we can get you to the VA. If it's something that, like what we target is we do outreach to reduce homelessness, the veterans' homelessness particularly, but regular homeless, overall homelessness in Maricopa County, we need to reduce it. Veteran homeless and outreach, if they're not used to understanding their benefits, that's our job. Are you an honorably served vet? Are you a dishonorably served vet? Let me show you where to go. You have anger issues? Let me take you somewhere, because that's what they're looking for. A lot of folks come out of the military and they kind of lose that, they're looking for that bonding. So the biggest thing is you want to make that bonding attempt. That's why when we get out there to the streets, hey, I'm Bill. I'm an Army vet. I heard you're a vet. You still looking for services? You start breaking that down and build that bonding immediately. Man, you look a little parched today. Here's a bottle of water. Let me go take. Are you hungry? Come on, let's go feed you. Right. Start identifying this stuff. And same thing with substance. You all right? You start identifying them. And we have that answer. If I can't have that answer, if I don't have that answer, I have a phone and I'm going to call anybody that I need to. So our other position is getting people reintegrated to VA systems.
Yeah. And, here's the other thing too, is that when we deal with the homeless, and the common public person, the commonality that I hear all the time is, the homeless, they're ruining our neighborhood. The homeless, they're moving in on my street and I want them out there. They're lowering my property value. Okay. How about we focus on mental health? Right. You want to know why there's a huge homeless population? It centers around the lack of access to mental health that we provided in this country. That is why we have a homeless issue. A lot of these folks are put out onto the streets because, maybe their wires are, a traumatic event that happened early on in their childhood, whether it was rape, whether it was abuse, and it goes untreated, and they start to misfire and they make a lot of poor life decisions. So you know what? They're disregarded. They're thrown out. They're not given a job opportunity because they have a criminal record. Well, if you don't have a job, how do you expect to put a roof over your head if nobody's giving you that chance? If nobody's giving somebody the chance to rewire their brain or get the traumatic services and work with counselors as they want, what do we expect them to do as a productive member of our society? That is why they turn to the streets. They have no other option out there. So until we provide services, mental health services, to the homeless in our communities, we will continue to have a homeless problem.
Correct. Yep, and that's where we are, is to connect those dots, because a lot of it is mental health awareness. We have to be aware of that in order to complete the puzzle of life.
So what do you say to the people out there? Because there is a lot of shame. There is a huge stigma, when it comes to people who do suffer mental health. Mm-hmm. And mental health, by the way, is a lot more than drugs and alcohol, right? It's depression, anxiety, it's suicidal thoughts. Not everyone who suffers mental health is a drug addict. What do you say to the people out there who, and it's something that's, listen, it's the reason why I launched this podcast, to be quite honest with you. Yes, I've been blessed from my higher power, a great platform to be a good communicator, to be on the news. But I wanted to create this podcast and I wanted to break my own anonymity, because I don't care. I wanted to break my own anonymity to put a face to mental health, because I've struggled with mental health issues. I have, clearly. And so part of my responsibility that I've taken on in my life is to end the stigma around mental health, because there's a huge stigma. And so as long as that stigma exists, we do not make it a safe environment for people to come forward and ask for help because of that stigma. Because the moment you go to your boss and you say, listen, I'm really depressed, they're going to look at you as weak. The moment you go to your boss or you go to a family member saying, hey, I'm really depressed, they're going to look at you like there's something just wrong with you, rather than saying, I get it, let's fix you.
Right.
So what's that message you say to the person who's listening right now that's saying, listen, I'm struggling and I'm scared to ask for help because I'm scared of losing my job, I'm scared of this, I'm scared of that?
The biggest message is I know you're scared, but make that attempt to reach out. I mean, it's there. The help is there no matter where you go. You can go to any anonymous meeting and reach out. There's somebody, and I don't want to, put the numbers out there, but more than likely, one of the CBI members will probably be at your recovery meeting, so they'll hear your story, and bam, you get hooked up. But don't be afraid to ask. That is one of the biggest things that I've learned. It is intimidating, So is jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. So is getting your first two tattoos,
Oh, I know.
And another big one is coming out.
I know that too.
Just ask.
Yeah.
And be you and be proud, have no shame in it. And there's a lot more of us out here than you think.
And I will tell you this, if you continue to keep that shame inside of you, it will come out.
It will.
It just will. So I know asking for help is really tough. Yeah. It just is. And even for folks who've relapsed, it's hard for them to admit relapse or to ask for help again, because, right, they don't want to be looked at as weak, right? That's the ego. It's the fragile ego that we all own. Well, thank you, Bill, for sharing your story. First off, thank you for the service to our country.
Absolutely.
That's a big thank you from me, and I know from a lot of folks who are listening and watching. But just look at Bill's life, look at Bill's story that he was able to share. I mean, this is somebody who did suffer, abuse in his childhood, but eventually went sideways, as he explained. He turned, to drugs, he turned to alcohol, to numb, but he was able to turn his life around. I mean, look at where he is today. He's now a leader in a leadership role at an incredible treatment center here in the Valley, Community Bridges, helping other people get clean and sober. So if you're listening right now, you feel helpless and hopeless, lean on Community Bridges. We have all their information up here on the screen right now. Reach out, give them a call, and just say, hey, I'm struggling. Just begin that conversation to talk to somebody, and just even reaching out to somebody will help kind of lift some of that weight on your shoulders, lift some of that darkness. So, Bill, thank you very much. Continued success, my man. Continue going out there and helping people.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you back here for the next episode. This podcast is brought to you by Community Bridges Incorporated. CBI is a premier nonprofit, fully integrated healthcare provider of substance use and behavioral health programs right here in Arizona. They offer prevention, education, and treatment services using cutting-edge technology, nationally recognized evidence-based models. CBI believes in maintaining the dignity of human life, and they know recovery is possible. The staff of over 1,600 employees celebrate, believe, and inspire others daily, as over 75% of the team members are in recovery themselves. Contact CBI at scheduling@cbridges.com or visit their website, communitybridgesaz.org.